Hey guys, welcome to the webinar. Hope everybody's got their sandwich and had a chance to settle in now. If anybody has not got their sandwich that was registered before Tuesday, please let us know in the chat so we can remedy this and get your sandwich taken care of. Also want to note for everybody that we will be randomly selecting 2 attendees to get a $50 Visa gift card at the end of the webinar, so please try to hang around and make it to the end if you can. We'll make it worth your while. Hopefully everybody's hearing me well, so if anybody's having any kind of technical difficulties, please let us know that in the chat also. I'm going to give us a couple minutes here just to let our late arrivals get in here before we really get started. Okay, looks like we're going to get rolling here. Still got a couple people jumping in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So, making the most of V8. Talking about Veeam, we got Jason Thomas here. That's me with Mirazon.
Wait for the beautiful graphics.
Yeah, wait for the beautiful graphics. It's a little laggy. So, I'm a Mirazon engineer. I'm a current Veeam CE8. I have 10 years of virtualization and server support, really focusing in the storage and virtualization side. Been a system admin stuff pretty much my life, so we all know that covers anything from Microsoft products on out. So, consider myself a fairly wide generalist. And I'll let Andy introduce himself here.
And I'm Andy Barhorst. I am a Veeam engineer. I've been with Veeam for about 2 years now, primarily working with a lot of our customers and potential customers on designing and how they can leverage the Veeam solutions to basically enhance their infrastructure, enhance some of their reporting and monitoring capabilities. Very knowledgeable on both VMware and Hyper-V sides of the house. In addition to that, I was a Veeam customer for 3 years, so I kind of walked in the same shoes that a lot of you are kind of walking in now. And so there's a lot of insight that I can help pass on as far as things that I took advantage of. And, unfortunately, a lot of the newer stuff that we have now, I really wish we had it back when I was a customer, but I'm excited to see us coming out with a lot of the new innovations that we have.
Okay. Thanks, Andy. We do have some poll questions we'll be asking through the webinar, and just to get some general ideas and info from everybody. So we'll now see this launch. And I'll give everybody a couple seconds here to make sure we get to answer the poll question. Looks like we have a slight lead for yes.
It's always good to see.
Yeah. A lot of Veeam customers, but some older versions. That's not unthought of. 7 was 6 and 7 are very good products. As you guys get the vote in, I would be really curious for the guys that are not using Veeam, if we could put in the chat window or so and even really say, you know, what do you currently use for Veeam, or what are you looking to...
Maybe what version of Veeam you're on.
Yeah. Any kind of info helps, any kind of questions we can answer going forward. Feel free to put it in the chat. Kind of go ahead and close the poll here. It looks like everything's slowed down. So what's new in Veeam Backup and Replication V8? You know, we need to go in an hour webinar, so we really wanted to focus on what's some of the big bells and whistles that comes to V8 that we didn't have before. And we wanted to really focus on these, and we did a lot of work with explorers. So we got the SQL Explorer, the Active Directory Explorer, encryption being added to the product as a whole. I want to touch on deduplication and some of the new dedupe support built into the product, and then you know, much more. As you know, we're here to talk about what you need from Veeam. So a client scenario going into SQL Explorer. You know, me personally, as being on both sides of the fence, but currently in a contracting role, we have all been to the scenario of, you know, how do we back up our big SQL production environments? You know, previously your DBAs were backing up SQL data separately. They had to do full backups. They had their own dedicated storage, and it was really handled in the SQL team. You know, that added a lot of extra burden on storage space, processing, you know, management of how that was working out with the other backup teams. So, you know, Veeam's really worked in as a product to give us a lot more options as far as the Veeam SQL Explorer. That, you know, that allows us to utilize our already in place Veeam backup system, you know, instead of a separate process or product. They have added a lot of granularity to the backup that even lets us go down to transactional logs. So even not even doing the full SQL restores, we can do down to transaction logs, point at time type restores in SQL. That helps us save a lot of space where we're not saving all these extra SQL full database files out on a server somewhere, and allows us to leverage the Veeam savings. And this leads us to our second poll question. Is coming on the screen. You know, we're really curious if you're using Veeam. A lot of times you might have a SQL backup solution already in place. Just going to give us a little feedback on how you're doing it today. We'll let Andy, if you want to speak in the SQL Explorer.
Sure. While we're finishing up the poll portion, let's talk a little bit about the Explorer and maybe some information that we can pass on to maybe position to how maybe why you would want to leverage the Veeam Explorer. So in a traditional mindset, most organizations, depending on the size, may have somebody that's dedicated to their SQL infrastructure and managing and maintaining that information. One thing that Veeam has done to really make life easier for our customers is introduced Explorers. And you've seen from Veeam previous to our version 8, we had the Exchange Explorer. We also had the SharePoint Explorer. And if you've had any experience with those, you've noticed that they're very easy to use and very easy to restore data. So what we wanted to do was bring that capability and that same easy-to-use mindset to the SQL Explorer. So what that now enables you to do is you can do easy transaction-level restores, granular, be able to roll up to a specific point in time without being a SQL DBA. So if you don't have that expertise in SQL, but you need to restore that database, you can do that very easily with our Explorer. And in a minute when we jump into the demo and I show you just how easy it is to do some of these restores, it'll take a lot of the burden off of you feeling that maybe you have to contract out work with somebody that's a database admin or somebody who has a lot of SQL experience. to where now you can do a lot of restores if, for whatever reason, maybe your SQL database or your SQL infrastructure had any kind of issues. This is also our first release of the SQL Explorer, so you can always anticipate that we are going to continue to improve and add more capabilities and functionalities as we go down the road. So a few of the best practices, there's really not a whole lot of gotchas to using the SQL Explorer. One of those is for the databases that you're restoring, when you go to that SQL staging server or the local SQL database server that you're leveraging to do the restores, make sure that it's at least the same version or newer than what you're using. Obviously, it's kind of a problem if you're using SQL 2008 and you're trying to mount 2012 databases. There's going to be a conflict of compatibility there, so that's one thing to keep in mind. If you do have a database for Veeam that is older than the database that you are restoring, you can always redirect to a newer SQL database or SQL server to be able to stage that there as well. In addition to that, we recommend the simple recovery mode. It just keeps the transactions very simple and transaction logs very simple and straightforward. We can support any mode that you're running in, but it's usually we find that as being a really good mode to go with.
Yeah.
In addition to that, having the Veeam application-aware image processing enabled, what this allows you to do is it allows you to have that granularity with the SQL Explorer. When we go into the demo here in a minute, I'll show you where you can enable that and what that brings to the table for you when you're backing up SQL. But really high level, what it does is it allows you to be able to have those granular backup capabilities with the transaction level and doing some of those things. And then in addition to that, we're also using or supporting SQL Server 2005 all the way up through 2014. So we're definitely being very progressive as far as covering new versions of SQL. So Jason, did we have a question?
It looks like we had a question or maybe a comment from Eli. Yeah, I'm trying to having technical difficulty here.
Oh, so these were some of the comments as far as what we were using before.
Yeah, sorry guys. I should have had the questions expanded out some. I kind of missed some of our original questions here. I didn't really see them pop up to me. We do have.
Oh, good.
Tom did not get a sandwich. And Ryan enjoyed his bread and turkey.
So Tim said, or Tim had a question as, if you're under support, do you get a free upgrade to version 8? And the answer is yes. As long as you are under support and current on your maintenance contract, you are always capable or able to upgrade to the newest and latest release of Veeam backup and replication. Miss Daniel missed a sandwich.
There's a lot of sandwich questions. Just to let everybody know, so this is not rigged. We put the orders in. My sandwich was also wrong. So we deal with that as far as we can with Jimmy John's. No advertising one way or the other. We got some V7 upgrades here. Okay, I think we have all the technical questions out of the way. If anybody has a technical question, make sure to put it in the chat, and you can raise your hand so we can actually see to make sure we're getting everything answered. We'll have Q&A at the end too. That if there's anything that's outside the realm of any other questions, feel free to ask.
Does Veeam restore sandwiches? If you have a virtualized Jimmy John's sandwich, I'm sure that we could probably help you with that.
It is a proprietary Jimmy John's format.
It is proprietary. That's 100% proprietary to Jimmy John's. We'll have to work on a converter tool for that. Okay, so SQL demo time. Let me. There we go. All right. All right, I'm cheating, so we'll start back over. Okay, so here is the familiar Veeam console as you know it. One thing we can do, and I'm not going to actually do a full SQL restore, but I will show you the process. So here is the restore wizard, and where everything happens, all the magic happens right here, right? So as you go on, you'll choose that you want to do an application item recovery. Then you'll obviously check next. Here's where all the magic happens as far as choosing which Veeam Explorer you'd like to take advantage of. For this, we're going to do the SQL Server, and we'll hit next. After this, Veeam is going to go through and populate which SQL servers we have been doing backups of. And you will see that this list is tailored down to virtual machines that we have found that are SQL servers. And this all goes back to the process of enabling application-aware backups and being able to integrate and interact with the guest OS as we're backing it up. So for the sake of this demo, I'm going to choose ATL SQL 01. We will do the latest restore point. I'm not a big fan of reasons, but we'll just call it webinar.
Nobody ever needs documentation or change control. I heard that's a fad and that's never going to catch on.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of not documenting anything, so just fly by the seat of your pants, right?
Yes.
Okay, so here we see, here's the database local to the SQL Server that we were backing up. So ATL SQL 01. Initially, right out of the gate, we're going to give you some information about where this database was located within the guest, secondary for all the log files, everything additional. Obviously, most SQL DBAs will break these out to different drives. This just gives you a better understanding of where things are within the actual guest OS for whatever reason you need to actually do anything with finding those databases that are local. Now, if you go and you right-click on that actual database, get the questions in.
Yeah.
So if you right-click on this database, you're presented with a few options here. Obviously, the first one is restore to the latest state. Jason and I were actually talking before we got started today, and he said one of the problems that he's run across is restore to the latest state doesn't always necessarily work if you have multiple domains. And that's a great point he brings up there. So there's one thing to keep in mind, and there's a way to really remedy that situation. And that's actually to go ahead and choose restore to another server. This actually allows you to pick another SQL Server and instance if you wanted to restore to that. And alternatively, you can give different credentials to give you that restore capability. So if that is a scenario that you're currently running in, that's one thing to keep in mind.
It's probably safer for testing too. I mean, a lot of people need to realize that restore to latest state is going to just instantaneously restore to that production server what you're hitting that button. So people need to realize that restore to latest state is in bold for a reason, I would say, from the program team.
I would say so.
It's just going to go do it. So make sure that's what you want.
So additionally, the middle option here for restore is you can do the point in time. That point in time, here in a minute, you'll see that we'll go through that. This gives you the ability to granularly go through and pick individual transactions that you would like to roll that database up to that moment in time. Another option is you can go ahead and export these database files out to flat storage or wherever you like to put them. One benefit to this is if you are or do have a SQL DBA in-house, this might be more beneficial to him so that he can take advantage of those databases and do whatever he needs to do with manipulating files, extracting any transactions, or running his own queries to get any data out of those SQL databases. So we'll do the point in time to show you how easy it is to get very granular. So here, this current restore point is as of that moment that we did the backup. If you wanted to jump forward and be a little bit more granular, you click that point in time. So here we're actually looking through it, and we're going to pick, whether we want to do, so say we want to do 155. Okay, at the beginning of 155, we're going to restore the database. Here it goes, boom, back to your SQL Server or the SQL Server of choice if you had done the restoring to a different SQL Server. If you wanted to get more granular, though, here's where you choose the perform the restore to a specific transaction. So this gives you that option to, if we hit next here, you can actually see that, this might take a second while we pull up all the transactions, but you can see every individual operation and modification of a transaction that's occurred within SQL as you've gone. So this is something that really gives you that granularity so that when you're rolling up the database and maybe you had an issue at a specific transaction, you can go up to just before that moment in time, and allow yourself to do that granular restore.
Yeah, nobody's ever got confused and had the wrong window open and maybe dropped the wrong cable or inserted the wrong row.
Well,
so you know exactly when it happens.
happens.
It's a thanks be for my CYA.
So anyway, so if we were to go ahead and choose that individual row in that table here, we would go ahead and hit restore, and that would go ahead and begin the process of restoring that database. So I am not going to actually restore the database. My database is just fine, but this would be the process that you'd go through. So real quickly, does anybody have any additional questions while we're on the SQL Explorer window?
Yeah, we have a lot of SQL questions coming in, guys, so
Definitely.
we will have Q&A definitely at the end.
Well,
we can address some of these maybe up front.
let's see here.
Doug Burns, any Oracle plans or getting out of SQL that we know about?
So currently on the table, we do not have anything with Oracle. I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that we may bring to the table. Oracle is a huge platform with a lot of users, so as Veeam does with a lot of their capabilities, we look at options to help our customers do restores. So that's something that may be a possibility down the road, so I would just keep your ears open.
Okay. Ben has a good question. Does V8 fix the snapshot issues when the SQL Server backs up and a Veeam job runs? I would say you're probably speaking to the fact of, maybe vCenter SQL database, or, there's a SQL backup and a job that's kind of conflicting with each other. You do always have to make sure that you're separating your backup jobs in your SQL, because if you are backing up the SQL database that you're running from, you will always have that snapshot or pause. I think it's probably what you're referring to. So if that's not an inherent Veeam process, so to say, maybe Andy can fix to that. But Ben, we could probably get more in depth to your exact example.
Go ahead and read Eli's response over.
I noticed.
So Eli said, I noticed that running application-aware backups with Veeam breaks my chains on SQL Server with, okay, so it breaks your native transaction logs. Okay, so I'm assuming that's version 7 still. So what happens in version 7 is we have the ability to truncate transaction logs. Version 8 has actually gone through and enhanced a lot of things in regards to SQL integration and how we manage those backups. So let me find a SQL. We'll just go ahead and edit this job right here real quick, and I'll show you some of the granularity with that application-aware image processing. So if we go down to guest processing and see here, we already have it enabled. It's very easy. It's as easy as a checkbox, and then adding in credentials. But additionally, you want to hit this nice application items right here, or this applications. Once you go in here, you can actually edit or specify specific virtual machines that you want to add these settings to. In the general box here, you're going to see successful processing. This application top portion is actually how we interact with VSS. So when we're doing that backup, typically I recommend let's have that successful processing, because that means we had a successful quiescence with VSS. So we were able to pause and flush any open transactions that are in memory. You can also alternatively do the try and continue on even though there are errors. I recommend always doing the successful, just because it gives you that reassurance that it's actually a true transaction consistent backup. Additionally, at the bottom we see the transaction logs. So this is what's a little bit different in version 8 here. Before, we would process the transaction logs, and when I say process, we truncated them, right? Now in version 8, you can do copy only. So this allows you, and as it says here in parentheses, is if you have SQL backups currently running, doing a copy only still gives you that granular transaction level restore capability through Veeam, but it doesn't stomp or screw up any markers that you may have currently with your SQL backups. So those are two important radio buttons that right there that can make or break some of the issues that you might run into, Eli, and that's something that I think is really to be beneficial to you. If you're on version 7, version 8 will actually give you some nice capabilities there. Additionally, there's also this SQL tab. This is where we're actually going to tell Veeam, this is how I want you to handle my SQL backups. So at the top, you're going to see, hey, let's truncate the logs on every backup. If you're not backing up natively with SQL additionally, great, because cleaning up those transaction logs is very smart on your part because you'll want to open up that free space. Do not truncate transaction logs is a great alternative to that as well if you are doing the SQL backups. The coolest part of our integration with SQL is actually the backup logs periodically. So now we can give you that recovery point of every 15 minutes when you're doing those SQL backups. And we can also choose how long we want to restore, or not restore, but keep those logs with Veeam. So when Veeam backs up these SQL transaction logs, we put them into a proprietary format. It's a VLB, so a Veeam log backup, and we're storing them with our backup files. What this allows you to do is everything you saw earlier from the granular choosing individual transaction to roll up that database at that point in time, that really helps to seal the deal with that portion. The process of actually grabbing those transaction logs does not require another snapshot within VMware or another checkpoint or snapshot within Hyper-V. This will go through and just communicate directly with the application running within the guest OS. That's the beauty of this portion. You don't have to take another VMware snapshot. So any questions? Do we have any questions pop up before we kind of start
rolling down there?
I think the new ones are at the top.
Yeah, they're actually kind of out of order.
Ben said it was on 7. Go the other way.
Yeah, there we go.
All my questions. Awesome. Good to hear that, Eli. We upgraded. Is it fixed with the inputs?
Yeah, I think we look fairly current.
Well, Eli had some additional.
What's the exported files look like? It's a standard, was it an MDP, or you're actual exported just like you would get from SQL as a flat file, Eli? And you have some export options that we can look at in the export of the Explorer.
So, okay, so Eli, we're kind of at the beginning of your questions here. So you're running Veeam backup jobs every few minutes. Not necessarily the backup jobs. You could still run your backup job nightly, but we'll give you every 15 minutes, we'll go communicate with VSS to just grab the transaction logs. So it gives you that granularity there still.
You're still only doing your actual Veeam backup once a day or whatever your normal job settings would be.
And then additionally, he went on to ask about performance impact of communicating with VSS. This is Microsoft's way of doing the database backups. VSS is actually leveraged when you're doing SQL backups itself. So we're using the same best practice recommendations from Microsoft to do our backups. So you shouldn't see a major performance impact from doing those transaction level log shippings. Does the snapshot still quiesce? Yes. It depends. So the snapshot natively, no. Snapshot with application-aware image processing enabled, yes. That will do the quiesce of databases or applications that are VSS aware. I don't see the SQL tab in the backup job. Do I have to install anything? Ben, are you on version? We upgraded. Yeah. So you're on version 8 now. Here, if
sure, I don't know.
Well, if you have application processing disabled, this might be an option that you have to check. And then from there, if you have copy only, you will not see
no SQL.
The actual SQL tab. So this means we're not.
Yeah, that's a version 8. So yeah, hopefully Ben just kind of look through those options to make sure it's actually turned on. That's something we definitely still see as an issue. We'd want to get more in detail and see exactly why you're not seeing the tab.
Yeah, so if you do the copy only, that will copy the transactions during the backup. That's correct. The tab goes away. So
yeah, because it's telling it to basically not worry about doing any kind of SQL tasks, as it says, lets another application use logs. It's taken for granted that you're using a third party or your own SQL backup solution.
So if you choose to do the process the transaction logs, then you can come in here and just back them up. Okay.
All right. So moving on. I think we're pretty caught up on questions, guys. Thanks for the questions. It's good good feedback.
All right. So let's flip back over here.
All right. So moving on to Active Directory Explorer. We're all been through the, hey, we deleted a user, we deleted a group, and we know how painful that is to sometimes recreate Active Directory with a lot of memberships and a lot of groups. So Veeam heard this as a problem, and they come up with this nice Active Directory Explorer. So we get visibility into Active Directory, supports 2008 and up. It can compare the backup state with the current Active Directory partition to quickly find changes. What that means is that in this Explorer, I can say, show me this user, and then I can say, show me this point of time, and it gives you a nice comparable, timestamp of saying, hey, on this X date, these groups were removed, or these attributes were changed. So, this allows you to recover AD objects in a matter of minutes instead of recreating, the wheel, so to say. And it can restore the original password for the account object. So, basically, Veeam's doing all the back-end magic to make that user go right back to that point in time. No additional AD, editing, syncing. Veeam's taking care of all that for you on the back end.
All right. So I have a client scenario that actually was presented to me just after we announced that we were going to be doing the Active Directory SQL or Active Directory Explorer integration. So what I had was, I was talking to a partner of mine, and he said, I saw on your website the other day that Veeam will be offering an Active Directory Explorer. I said, yeah, it should be really neat. It's going to be something different, right? It's not something that a lot of vendors have out there as far as a backup solution goes. Now, I know you have your ADSI edits, and there's some other companies that have AD-specific tools, but from a backup vendor, there haven't really been too many solutions that have offered this type of integration. And the situation was as such. A customer had a consultant in doing some Active Directory cleanup. They were automating the process, just really trying to button up the shop and make everything really clean within Active Directory. And one of the things that they were doing was they were deleting old users, cleaning up some organizational units, and the contractor accidentally went through and managed to delete an entire OU with all the computer accounts and users and everything that was associated with it. So it was just troublesome, and that actually created quite the disruption for that business that day, because as you can imagine, no computer accounts, no user accounts means no access, right? So that's a problem, and that's a big issue within that company. And what happened was, this actually happened, I believe, on a Thursday or a Friday. The contractor and some of the employees at the company ended up spending the entire weekend recreating and rebuilding everything that had been deleted to repair all the damage that was done just by trying to automate and clean up that Active Directory database. And so he was almost sick when I told him that had they been backing up at least one domain controller with Veeam, they would have been able to just easily go into our Explorer, right-click on that OU, and restore everything. And like I said, in a minute, when I go through and I show you just how easy it is, it'll be a tool that you'll definitely, nobody ever wants to do restores, but it's a tool that can help you out quite a bit. So as far as best practices go, I know I usually receive a mixed response when I ask people this question, and you guys don't directly have to respond, but I usually ask, do you have virtual domain controllers or do you have physical domain controllers? And one of the things that I typically get is, well, I'm never going to go all virtual on my domain controllers. I'm at least going to have one physical domain controller. And my response is, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But what I do want is I do want my customers, and specifically with this Active Directory integration that we have now, I do want them to make sure that if they do have a virtual domain controller, at least back up one of them with Veeam. Now I know AD does a good job of doing replication between domain controllers and trying to protect itself, and that's great, but the restore capabilities with what Veeam does are definitely worth at least backing up one of those domain controllers, because you may not restore an entire domain controller, but you might want to restore individual users. So that's all I really had as far as best practices go. Always enable application-aware image processing. I actually tell most of my customers, always enable this for every virtualized system. That's because Windows itself is reliant upon VSS. Everything from the registry to applications, they're all integrated with VSS. Enabling application-aware image processing gives you that full consistency. It's not a crash consistent backup, it's a true transaction consistent backup, and that's very important to note. So did you have anything, Jason, before we jump in?
No, Active Directory Explorer, I agree with everything. I agree imaging processor, it doesn't take overhead for a Windows server to have VSS, so I see absolutely no reason not to have it on.
It's just a quick call to the OS to quiesce and pause.
As far as domain controllers, it's definitely good to have one being backed up for Active Directory. You just want to make sure that one common mistake I run into in the field is make sure when you're backing up your domain controllers that they're at least separated by at least an hour in the job. You don't want to back up all your DCs together. You ask for kind of breaking AD replication when they all go into backup states. So give a little bit of time between them, and that's really the only thing you have to worry about with having a lot of Veeam backups on your DCs.
All right. Before we go into the demo, we've got a couple questions here. If anyone else has additional questions while we're taking them, this would be a good time before we go into the demo.
William French says, if computers are deleted from the domain, would the restore actually rejoin the computers to the domain? Wouldn't the ODE access token be rejected by the domain controller?
So there's some black magic going on here, so I'm not going to lie to you. We're actually restoring these objects back into Active Directory as if they never left. So it's the original token, it's the original identifiers, all the original information. And actually, so for a second, let's talk about a user. If you restored a user back into Active Directory, you can actually restore it with the password intact. So if you accidentally deleted 10 users and realized your mistake and restored said 10 users, they wouldn't even know they were deleted because they wouldn't even have to reset their password. Now you cannot see the password, you don't know the password, they know their password hopefully, but you're restoring that user like it had never left. Pretty cool stuff, and a lot of kudos to our development team on that one. So what was the other question?
Speaking to computers, it would be on the same access, William, because that Active Directory controller is not going to reuse that token. There is some magic on the back end where you're actually going to be able to reuse that token and put everything back in like it's never been deleted. The next question from John Lucas says, I have two DCs, one on Windows 2000 and the other on Windows 2012. Both are virtualized. Can I use Veeam AD Explorer? Yes.
John, what is your domain level?
Exactly where I said. Sorry, it has to be 2003. 2003.
Yeah. So, So you'll want to upgrade the domain function level to 2008 and newer. That's our supported domain function level. So you can use our old version of the AD integration, which was to basically turn on the virtual machine into a virtual lab to do some of those restores. That's not available in version 8, but if you do contact our support, they can help you with getting access to that code. Any additional questions before we jump forward?
Questions?
All right, let's quickly
Jump into the demo. Clicky.
All right. So back into the Veeam console again. My trusty little restore button. We'll go to VMware. We'll choose application items again. Active Directory. We'll hit next. Again, with application aware image processing enabled, it's identified that this is the only domain controller that I've been backing up. If for some reason you do not have application aware enabled, you will need to go in here and choose show all VMs, and then from here you can dig into your backups to find that Active Directory domain controller. But since I have application aware enabled, I'm going to go ahead and choose my domain controller. Most recent point in time is just fine with me. I don't like reasons, remember. No, I'm kidding. If you like to put reasons in there, that I think it's a great idea. It's a good documentation process. Say you're restoring, I can just say I'm going to restore my user account. We can hit next, and then we'll hit finish. So behind the scenes, we're reading directly into that backup file. We're not turning the virtual machine on. We're digging directly into Active Directory. We're going to read out of it and be able to do restores directly out of that domain controller. So in a second, you'll see that we're going to be mounting the restore point. While this is mounting, let's go ahead and jump into our AD real quick. Now, apparently my guys at Veeam don't trust me because I only have access into this little AD demo OU, but this will serve our purposes, right? So who do we want to delete today? We'll delete me. Yeah. We can delete Andy. That'll work. Yeah. So we'll go. No, Andy's fired. All right, there he goes. I'm gone.
No, we need Andy. Why did you do that?
Well,
you can restore it.
There were a little rash on the side of the fire me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into the backup. We didn't really want to fire Andy, right? So here you see that as of the backup, here I am. I'm there. One cool functionality that you have with this is we can compare with production. So if we go ahead and click compare with production, we're going to break it. You've got a tombstone on me. I'm gone. I was deleted, right? So that's a quick way to identify that this...
Does this mean that you become a zombie when you come back after the tombstone?
I will be.
The zombie status.
I just want you to know that I'm not going to be a slow zombie like The Walking Dead. I'll be a fast running zombie.
Full-on running zombie.
I will catch everyone. Anyway, so if you wanted to filter out changed objects only, you can do that as well. Obviously, this filters out and shows just me.
Yeah, so if there were security group changes or other things with your user, you would see it in that menu. We just see the delete action.
So there's a couple options here. You can export this user to the desktop. Obviously export somewhere else. You can restore to the domain that it came from, or you can choose to restore to another domain or to another server, right? So here these are your
another domain.
Right. So here are your options to restore to a different server within that domain. So we're going to hit cancel because I actually want to just put him right back to where he was. And if you need to, for whatever reason, you can quickly view the attributes. Well, let's go ahead and restore me real quick. We changed our mind. Let's keep Andy employed. So as we're going, you get the summary, one object successfully restored. We hit OK. Let's go back in and refresh this folder, and Andy's back. Everything's okay. We unfired Andy. He's back to work now. And the neat thing is the password is still the same.
Yeah, so he doesn't even know that he almost got fired, that he was on the chopping block. None the wiser.
None the wiser. So, does anybody have any questions about Active Directory integration and restores? Again, this is our version 1 of AD integration. We will be and continue to develop against this and add more capabilities just to expand functionality. But all the objects that you would want to restore, you can most definitely do that from the AD Explorer.
Yes, and we all saw just how seamless and easy it is. Just really refresh, no additional steps required.
Let's go ahead and you just close those out. We'll jump back to the, that's fine. We can go ahead and jump back to the. All right.
Looked like we had no AD questions. That was just, it's so cool. Everybody was wild in the silence. So real quick before we jump into encryption, that is our next poll question here of how are you currently meeting your encryption?
Assuming you have encryption requirements. Yeah. So if you don't have any, just say, I don't.
I don't. I guess I don't stands for I don't have any.
100% on I don't. I like that. No, I'm kidding. So while we're finishing up the poll, I'll just
real quick. Ben just had a question: is AD Explorer an add-on? No, it's a fully function part of the Veeam package.
Yeah. So the way Veeam does all of their products and versioning is obviously we have standard, enterprise, enterprise plus. The true integration into the console is through enterprise and enterprise plus. Although all of our explorers are actually free, so there's just a little bit more work on the front end of you to be able to do those restores, but you can still leverage those capabilities. And no, it's not an add-on. So while we're finishing up the poll, we'll quickly just kind of start talking about encryption here and some of the advancements that Veeam has added into version 8. So version 8, you saw the introduction of encryption. Encryption has been asked by our users for quite a while now, and a lot of our answers previous were telling them to encrypt the files after they've landed in the repository or doing some things of that nature. Veeam has now introduced this into the solution to where you can go ahead and choose to encrypt those backup files as we're doing them, and it's a full end-to-end encryption. When data's in transmit, we're encrypting it with SSL. When it's at rest, it's all sitting there encrypted, AES 256-bit encryption. So Veeam plays in all silos, everything from healthcare to federal to your state and local government, PCI compliant. So we build all of these encryption standards to be able to cover those capabilities. With Enterprise and Enterprise Plus, we also natively have the ability to store a second copy of that key in the Enterprise Manager. So if you are leveraging encryption and you have Enterprise or Enterprise Plus, you will definitely want to make sure that you have installed and configured your Enterprise Manager. And if you do not know what Enterprise Manager is, it is the web portion of the Veeam backup and replication installation. So, and there's some extra capabilities built into the Enterprise Manager as well.
Yeah, so. Double stars. Basically, just to regurgitate, guys, Veeam has told this as a day one encryption that there is no magic wand, there is no way of getting your encryption back. It is real encryption. It is encrypted. Please make sure you have personal copies of your key in other places because there is no getting it back if you lose your key. It would just be net new, starting over backups. Support doesn't have a magic key to unlock that.
So before we jump ahead here, let's address the poll here. So it looks like 72% said they do not have a requirement for encryption. That relieves a lot of stress and having to deal with those requirements. Server encryption, BitLocker, okay, that's good, and then built-in storage encryption as well, probably on the back-end storage. So that's typically what I see. I see a lot of that, so that's always a good thing. We'll jump ahead.
Yeah.
No questions? All right, let's go ahead and jump on to the next slide. Jason, I'll let you take this one.
Okay. Deduplication. We wanted to kind of hit on the deduplication. That didn't make any sense. Deduplication part of Veeam. Veeam has always been awesome with its deduplication is enabled per job. We all love Veeam because it really allows us to get a lot of space savings in our backup job, as we see our advanced setting here from our data reduction tabs. It is fixed block deduplication. That fixed block deduplication gives us really tight integration with Exagrid and Data Domain for those customers that have those as their backup repositories. That V8 gives us a nice tight integration with those. You'll see much better performance. Andy's telling me I'm dry, so I'm going to take a drink of water
You're
here.
dehydrated.
And we can get much more in detail with the extra grid or the data domain. If anybody has questions, please let us know and we can get a little deeper into those integrations. With 2012, deduplication is still very much a viable option on your Veeam repositories as well.
So I do want to make a comment about the 2012 deduplication or 2012 R2. Veeam has some white papers out there about how to properly create your backend stores to leverage Server 2012 dedupe. A lot of that is putting the right block sizes with that dedupe so that it matches and lines up with your Veeam blocks. Jason, didn't you have a couple extra things to say about that?
You know, a couple of the big heavy hitters we see. First and foremost, forward incremental only. We don't want to be doing reverse incremental. That definitely works against dedupe as a whole. It's kind of a dedupe saving technology itself. So we want to make sure we're using forwards. And then we want to use large block formatting. Now, Andy was getting into the block sizing that becomes a big deal. NTFS from a block level is going to have stripe sizes and block sectors. You know, dedupe is looking for like blocks, and that's how dedupe works as a general premise. So we want to do large block formatting. Veeam has put that out into the best practices. That's something really to consider when we're using any kind of dedupe appliance, but really with 2012. And by default, large block sizing in NTFS on a Windows-based repository is 64K. That 64K, you want to make sure that we're thinking about how that stripe size is going to break down to our underlying storage. Traditionally in a Dell or say Cisco, HP controller, most of your controllers will default to 64K stripe size. So we want to make sure that kind of matches up through the stripe size through each layer of the storage to make sure that we're getting that additional saving and performance that we want.
And we could probably do a whole other session on just your back-end storage, but I think Jason just wanted to throw a couple recommendations out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do have the poll up here that we just went through that just was saying how what's your dedupe application that you're using. No love for Exagrid or data domain. We got 2012, and we do have other, and we have 62% says I don't use dedupe. That's a little higher than what I expected on the do not use. Feel free in the chat to give me some kind of reasons. Is this usually because we're older than 2012 or using different type storage devices that probably don't support a dedupe technology? I'd be really curious to understand. And then other, I'd also like to see what other kind of dedupe, you know, maybe like a Riverbed or some of the other maybe dedupe appliances on our other. Please, okay. Tom says IBM, ZFS. Sure. Gotcha, nice.
So, in addition to that, does anybody have any questions before we move forward after covering encryption and deduplication? Well, Ben, you make a good point. Some of those appliances can be expensive, and that's typically why we talk about doing the Server 2012 or 2012 R2 deduplication, because it puts the control in your hands. You can create your own server, put your drives in there, do what you need to do to create a more cost-effective solution without actually spending all the big bucks on maybe a true appliance where all the work's done for you.
Yeah, and 2012 supports dedupe natively from standard edition up. 2012, 2012 R2. You know, it's kind of a free feature. It's just as easy as a feature that you turn on. So if you're already leveraging 2012 for your repositories, you know, as long as we think about the architecture, you know, it's a free technology to leverage some space savings.
All right, so I think we have anything else, or are we going to go into the bonus round?
I think we're ready for the bonus round.
All right, so I have a little bonus. Most of you have probably already heard about this, but Veeam is coming out with a solution called Veeam Endpoint Protection. So some of you may ask yourself, what is this? What is it going to do? And how can I take advantage of it? So Currently, right now, endpoint protection is in beta. The beta is closed, and we're kind of finalizing some things to actually go GA release. And our GA release, I know at the bottom it says early 2015. It's a great, ambiguous early 2015 term. We're looking at March, sometime in March. So that's right around the corner. What endpoint protection is and what it isn't. It's laptop and desktop backup. This will do Windows 7, Windows 8, and newer. In addition to that, we can back up Server 2008 and newer. So if you do have some 1Z or 2Zs left in your data center that you need to provide data protection for, we can give you that backup for that. It has 3 capabilities as far as where to store these backups. You can do it local to the server itself, off to a NAS or network share. And then when patch 2 for backup and replication comes out, that will unlock the capability for endpoint protection to actually piggyback on your Veeam infrastructure. So we can back up these endpoint backups directly to a Veeam repository. Now, endpoint protection will give you that bare metal recovery. So essentially what it is it's a Windows PE enhanced by Veeam recovery model. You create a recovery CD like any other solution that you've used before. That CD is specific to that server, so when you need to go do a restore, you'll pop in that CD, or I know a lot of CD drives aren't on servers now. You could do a USB or an SD card, whatever you need to do, and restore from that CD, DVD, or even your USB drive. So what this does, it'll prompt you, pull you up into a recovery screen, and then you can target which location you've been doing these endpoint protection backups to. This is fully VSS aware. When we're doing the backups, we will communicate with VSS. We can back up these systems live while they're running hot, and also give you that file level recovery as well. So a lot of really cool capabilities. And one thing I didn't mention is it's going to be free. It's 100% free. Version 1 will be free. We are aggressively developing against this solution, so I would anticipate some further development with this as we go down the road in 2015. But a lot of really cool stuff.
Can you run it on the machine?
Yes, you can. You do run it on the machine. This little window you see here that says Veeam Endpoint Backup, that is the control panel within the actual physical system itself.
Yes, I would say it's made to be a standalone product. So if you download the executable, you install it locally, you run through a really quick setup of where you want to put the backup, how to build your bare metal, and then you kind of set it and forget it, just like a Veeam backup would be. Great scheduling options. I know personally on my laptop I have it where backup kicks off when it sees my storage. So when I plug into my home network or I plug in my external drive, it says, hey, this is my backup repository, I see this, and I'll back up. That helps me when I'm traveling. I'm not scheduling it or forgetting to run a backup on a schedule. It just, when it sees the backup repository, it kicks off a new backup. Any idea how it handles remote systems like a salesperson leaves the office?
I think you pretty much just answered that.
Yeah.
Obviously, the backup job will error out if it cannot communicate with the storage. So it'll sit in a ready state, and I believe you'll just miss that backup.
That's why I like to use mine as backup when storage is attached. Therefore, you're not going to get the errors of it trying to run when it can't run. Or you would run to like an external hard drive that therefore you could attach, out of your bag and actually give it the storage it needs.
Now, I will put out one little extra here. Veeam has a forums website, so it's forums.veeam.com. It's free to sign up, free to participate. You can put questions and ideas out there, and you can have some active say in helping to build out features and functionalities in all of our solutions. So get out there and sign up so that you can put some questions or put some ideas out there on the forum for things that maybe you would like to see.
Mickey wants to say, will it always be free or only during beta?
Version 1.0 will always be free, and from my understanding and what I've been told, everything that is available in version 1 will always remain free. So Veeam has pride themselves on creating free tools to allow our customers to have some functionality and to protect themselves and do some things within their infrastructure. As most of you know, and maybe you don't, backup and replication has some free functionality built up into it as well. It's just mainly Veeam Zip, but that gives you a point-in-time backup without any scheduler, but it's a single backup. And Veeam One also has some limited functionality as far as monitoring and reporting goes. So you can anticipate that this same capability will be with endpoint protection, to where what is free in current and version 1 should always remain free, and that is not just during beta, that will be for the foreseeable future.
Okay. We do have one more poll question that we were curious about that goes into how many copies of your backups do you keep?
I think we forgot about this one.
Well, it wasn't directly tied to a slide. It's more of a talking point. Seen a lot of 4+ so far. That's good.
A lot of copies.
Yeah, a lot of copies. You think we got lucky that that's green and that's 3, and Veeam says 3 to 1? Just happen to be Veeam color.
Sure. All right. So while that's closing up, does anybody have any questions in general about anything that we've covered today? We've gone through a lot of really good information, from the SQL Explorer to the Active Directory Explorer. We've also touched on encryption and deduplication. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to the Veeam solution itself, but we wanted to highlight some of these today. So Jason, I would like to open it up. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Be happy to expand on anything that we can.
Ben Carson does backup logs on SQL and not truncate the logs.
You have the option to do a copy only, so that you do not truncate the logs. So it can go one of 2 ways. If you want to truncate them, you can.
Yeah, I think he's saying that when I'm backing up the logs, does it still truncate the logs? It'll still follow your general, your job settings of how long that you need to have it, and if you get outside that realm, it will truncate and clean up and keep that retention point of whatever the job is saying that your retention would be.
So I think what Ben was referring to is,
yeah, the lowest you can back up down to is every 15 minutes.
if you come in here under applications.
Oh, yeah. Take the poll off because you can see the.
Oh, you can't. Oops.
Yeah, close. There we go. Helps if we
Okay.
can see what you're looking at.
There you go. So if you come in here and we do the edit, if we do the copy only, you're right, the tab goes away, and we only do the copy during the backups
Here
here.
above says does not truncate, so go to the SQL tab itself.
Yep.
And if we do backup logs every 50 minutes.
So here, do not truncate.
I think he's referring to if you're backing up the logs. When does it truncate, or does it truncate when it's backing them up? It says a correspondence and index level backup, so it should go off the
that's
retention.
the duration of how long we're keeping them. This is going to back up the logs, process transaction logs. So this is just backing them up. I don't think we're actually truncating them here for you, Ben.
Yeah.
Um,
And you
this-
can work
this
on
is
getting
just-
a clear answer.
Here what we're doing is we're just log shipping them up to the Veeam server itself. Yeah, I think this is exactly what you would want.
Okay.
Sorry, it's not as clear as what you're saying. Maybe I'll provide some of that feedback back to development to put some of that information in the UI, so it's a little more clear.
And Ben, if we need to do some actual more deep dive on your environment or anything, that's definitely a conversation we could have, and we can definitely test that to make sure it's giving you the functionality that you're expecting.
All right.
So, any other open questions here? Mickey says, should this be used in conjunction with SQL maintenance plans, or can it be used in place of? Mickey, the way I see this, that it should be used in place of, once you get comfortable and capable with the solution, to make sure it's hitting your checkboxes of what you need to have as far as your SQL maintenance plans. I'm not saying that it's going to fit everybody's window, that you just throw out your DBAs, throw out your current SQL backups, and just go straight to Veeam. I very much encourage testing and walking through to make sure you're comfortable and it does meet your needs. With the functionality being there, it definitely can replace your traditional SQL maintenance plans. So yes. Yeah. Test. We all test, Mickey.
I like to cover my eyes and just click go.
It's about the same. Who tests their current SQL maintenance plans?
Does anybody test their backups? I don't.
Yeah, there's a virtual lab for that. Everybody does that, right? Verify.
All right. Any other? Oh, every month, right? Well, that's good. Every month is good.
Yeah, I think we're pretty current on everything up there.
All right. Any other questions before we close it up? Appreciate everyone coming out today. It's been fun for Jason and I to have a nice little chat about Veeam over lunch, and I'm sorry to everyone who did not get their sandwich or did not get their sandwich made to their liking. Jimmy John's, although freaky fast, I think sometimes maybe misses a few steps, but
not freaky accurate. No.
Yeah, well, maybe we can give them some sub-virtual labs to make sure that the quality is right.
Okay. Looks like Brian has a deduping question for Veeam. Yes, reverse incremental is not good for deduping. The way reverse incremental works is that full backup file setting, and then you have your new forward incremental changes. And when that job is done, it's going to merge/ingest that back into the backup chain. Basically, that block changing and that full backup file ingesting over time is basically kind of canceling out a lot of the dedupe savings you'll get. And just fundamentally, at least on 2012, if you have dedupe on and reverse incrementals, the fragmentation from both running against each other could quite possibly break MTFS over time. I've seen it firsthand. We all go back into the days where we really had to worry about fragmentation. We're telling dedupe to look at blocks. We're telling reverse incrementals to keep moving blocks around. They basically work against each other until MTFS becomes fragmented, and you'll start getting some file corruption and some file errors. So yeah, reverse incremental is not recommended for any kind of deduplication, at least on the Windows sides. I would have to verify that with Exagrid and some of the vendors. Always go by their best recommended practices.
It's really, Ben, to be honest with you, it's really situational and what makes sense for your infrastructure. Sometimes forward incremental is the perfect way because you're writing off the tape. Other times you may see reverse incremental be really good because it's going to general purpose disk. And then we also have forward incremental forever. So there's a lot of options here. I think the best thing to do is just educate yourself on what your end goal is. If your end goal is to go to general purpose disk, it's not as big of a concern. If you're going off to tape or maybe a deduplication target, you'll definitely want to make sure that that fits your strategy. So it's really hard to say what's best, but
just at least with dedupe, forward incremental is a must.
Okay, so Sean, if you hold on one second. Oh, all right. So I'm going to ask 2 trivia questions, and then first one to answer with the correct response will win. And you can only win once, so I hope maybe we'll wake some people up from their food coma from lunch, and we'll kind of move forward here. So I was talking earlier, and here's the question. What did I say you should always have enabled when you're backing up virtual guests? All right. And Tyler, application aware does count. So Tyler, you will be receiving a
$50 Visa gift card.
$50 Visa gift card. All right, it's fixed. Maybe a little latency on the reply. Okay. What's another question we can ask here?
Lack of mail slowed me down. Nice. Second trivia question. What is the lowest amount of time that you can have Veeam back up your transaction logs?
Oh, that was already...
Wow. That woke everybody up. That was a give me. It's still actually on the screen. It looks like the winner of that is Bob. Bob DeVille.
Wow.
Very close. That was very close, guys. It all comes in. So whoever had the fastest internet connection may have won the...
That was some milliseconds.
The milliseconds on that.
Man, we got bombarded with a bunch of 15 minutes.
Mickey is really close at 156 minutes. But that would have been incorrect, Mickey.
I love it. All right. So, Bob, you'll be receiving a $50 Visa gift card as well. So that wraps it up for our winners today. We appreciate everyone jumping on. And was there a question? All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact either Veeam or Mirazon, and be happy to help you. So thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.